Teng-kee, this is a secret surprise for you. I hope you like it, and Jaime, it's for you too. We're getting ready to start our session, but we wanted to have people personally tell you how much they love and miss you first. So I'm getting choked up, but we love you and miss you, okay?
Absolutely, you guys. Wishing you all the best. Know all will be fine. Love you guys, take care.
Teng-kee, hi. We were missing you so much today here in Kansas City, and I must say how honored I am that you asked me to be part of this symposium. Looking forward to seeing you back here in great health soon.
Hey Teng-kee, we're missing you, man. You know, Marianne was really hoping she was going to see you. In fact, she didn't know until last night that you weren't going to make it. But when she found out why you were staying home, she was so happy that you were taking care of yourself. We love you and Miley, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
Well, I consider it an honor to have been invited to be part of a panel with you. It's unfortunate that I haven't been able to meet you, nor have we been able to do this together. I wish you well, and I hope that you're able to meet your challenges.
Teng-kee, man, I wish I could see you. This is a great week. We're having a great time. Everybody's asking about you, so I think you can feel our presence. Well, I can't tell you how many times I thought about our trip to China. I think it was in 2010. That has come up so many times, and I can't tell you how much I think about that all the time. Be well, my friend. I know you're having a tough time, but you know, my thoughts and prayers are with you.
Teng-kee and I may, you would be loving at what's going on here. There's all kinds of energy, and we miss you a lot.
Wish you were here.
Teng-kee, we miss you right now. We certainly understand why you're not here, and we hope it will be a good session without you. We know it would have been a ton better with you, but we'll do our best. We hope you're doing well, feel better, look forward to seeing you hopefully soon.
Hi Teng-kee, I just hung up talking to you about 5 minutes ago, but now we're down at Union Station, and as usual, we miss you so much. Sorry you're not here, but I'm glad you're doing okay, and you're better off being there than here. But you are really missed, and we'll try our best to get along without you today. And tell Jaime we love her too, and we want you to get well. That's the main thing. And all your friends are here in China, and I know you're responsible for this meeting. Wouldn't take place without you, and I know you're upset that you couldn't be here, but you're at the right place. You need to take care of yourself, get well.
And I thought it a brilliant move, because we have a brilliant town. Huffington Post says we're the coolest town in America. Don't forget it. And we're determined that you don't have to get out of here. And part of that coolness comes from the architecture in this town. So Peter deSilva, the COO of the United Missouri Bank, has been kind enough to preside over this session, and we start, Peter, it's happy, we're happy to have you.
Well, good afternoon. Welcome. It's wonderful to have you all here in Kansas City and in historic Union Station, which in many ways is one of our iconic buildings we have here in our community. It happens to be 100 years old, which by your standards may not be old, but by ours it is. But it's certainly a beautiful example of the kind of architecture that we've been building in Kansas City for a long, long, long time now. I think you're going to enjoy today's panel. We do have some of the best and brightest in helping us think about how architecture really improves each of our lives here in Kansas City. In many ways, we have some visionaries as well, which you begin to see some of the elements of their vision come to life on the screen there. I'd especially like to acknowledge before we begin and welcome Ambassador Ma Se-rong, a former ambassador of Germany and president of the China Society for People's Friendship Studies. So we welcome this ambassador to us today. Of course, we'd like to thank the Edgar Snow Symposium for the opportunity to bring today's panel together. And for our panelists, we'd like to thank you all for the time that you've taken today to participate. For those who don't know me, just a little bit more of my background. I am indeed involved with a large financial services company here in Kansas City named UMKC Financial Corporation. We also have been around for 100 years and continue to do good things, not only here, but across the country and in many ways now across the world. You know, a few years ago, I actually had the pleasure of being the chair in 2011 of the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. And in fact, you're standing in our boardroom today. This is officially the boardroom of the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. And we moved in here back in 2011, 2012 from a nondescript office building in downtown Kansas City, in part to help revive this old station, but also in part as a recognition of the beauty of this building and how it should be functionally utilized as we go forward. But I would also say this, when I was the chair, we came up with this idea that Kansas City really needed to consider its future economy. And as luck would have it, my chairmanship ended, and my good friend Greg Grace picked that up and said, we're going to start something called the Big Five. And I want to spend just a minute on our Big Five, because I think it's important and illustrative of the kinds of collaboration that we have going on here in Kansas City. So since our focus of this symposium is in part on architecture and art, but also entrepreneurship, let me spend just a minute and tell you about what we're trying to do here in our community. So our community today has embraced a big goal, and that goal is to become known as America's most entrepreneurial city. And our movement, I'm going to come back to that word, it's very important, our movement is gaining strength and accelerating very, very, very rapidly. Now, I did select the word movement very deliberately, because when we talk about becoming America's most entrepreneurial city, we recognize that that's not something you can do in a month, a year. Sometimes it might take even a generation to get that to where we want it to be. And what we are trying to do in our community today is to create this sustained movement whereby entrepreneurs feel that Kansas City embraces them, supports them, and that we have built one of the strongest entrepreneurial ecosystems in America. You know, if you think about this in the context of an environmental ecosystem, in order for things to grow, there has to be sunlight, there has to be water, there has to be fertilizer, there has to be soil, and all of those things need to happen in exactly the right proportion. An entrepreneurial ecosystem is no different than that. You have to have support, you have to have resources, you have to have capital, you have to have people who have the skills and such to become those future entrepreneurs, and that's what we're trying to do here in Kansas City. We are working very, very hard to build the ecosystem such that entrepreneurs can flourish and grow and can help build the future economy of our community. We have a lot going on, and I won't go through all of it with you, but suffice it to say that this is becoming a very entrepreneurial community, and we hope ultimately for the rest of America, and maybe the rest of the world, to say, Silicon Valley, interesting, but Kansas City is where you gotta be. And that's what we're trying to do here in Kansas City. Now, just a little bit more about our panel today. Let me formally introduce them each if I could. I'm Mr. Henry Bloch to my left, co-founder and honorary chairman of the board of H&R Bloch. Through the years, Mr. Bloch has been honored as an entrepreneur, a philanthropist, and for his exceptional service to the Kansas City business, cultural, and philanthropic communities. He serves as chairman of the H&R Bloch Foundation and the Marion and Henry Bloch Family Foundation. Generous benefactors to numerous organizations, including the Nelson-Atkins Museum of Art and the Bloch School of Management at the University of Missouri in Kansas City, and the new Henry W. Bloch Executive Hall for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Not that one, but it is rotating up there, and you'll see it in just a moment. We're also pleased to Henry's left to have his son Tom Bloch join us. Tom is past CEO of H&R Bloch, and Tom is the co-founder of the University Academy, a very successful public charter school here in Kansas City. He serves as president of the endowment fund for the Bloch School of Management and at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and vice chairman of the H&R Bloch Foundation, as well as the Marion and Henry Bloch Family Foundation. He's a founding member of the UMKC Foundation Board of Directors and is past chairman of the UMKC Trustees. Next, we have Steve McDowell. Steve is the director of design at BM Architects here in town. Steve leads studio directors, associates, and designers at every level to produce architecture that celebrates people, the site, the environment, technical exploration, and the joy of human life. His originality is creating a new definition of architectural practice in the city and across the country. And lastly, but certainly not least, we have Dana Knapp. And Dana is the former director of planning with the Nelson-Atkins Museum of Art, where she coordinated all of the organizational and capital planning activities with trustees, consultants, community partners, and staff. She also led the Bloch building construction and renovation of the Nelson-Atkins building. Dana was most recently director of programs at the Mid-America Arts Alliance. So I have been asked to ask these panelists a few questions, and I have them right here on these cards. They have not seen these questions. They don't quite know which one's going to which person, and I'm probably going to get in trouble at the end of this for that reason. But with that said, I think it'd be appropriate for maybe each person to answer this sort of starting question, if you will, in their own way. To start with you, Henry. When you were thinking about the Nelson-Atkins Museum, you were thinking about the new Bloch building. What were you trying to accomplish when you had that original vision?
Well, we needed more space. We had outgrown the original building, which was built in 1930, and we needed more rooms. So we assembled a group of architects, and we picked, what were there? I think 4 or 5 finalists. And we went around, we flew to Europe and visited some of the buildings that they had created, and came back to Kansas City, and then we had our final meeting with the 4 or 5, and selected one named Stephen Hall from New York to be the architect.
And why did you select him? What
That was very interesting. He was the last one to make a presentation, the last one of the 4 or 5. And the others all picked the same location, which would be on 45th Street. It's hard to say, but it's on 45th Street, facing I'm kind of hiding the old building. They all did that, except Stephen Hall, who said he wanted to build it on the east side, going downhill, so it wouldn't interfere with the beautiful building. And people driving up 45th Street could see the original building, which is really a very beautiful building. And of course, Stephen Hall recognized that, and he didn't want to compete with them. So he picked completely a very different architectural building. And that's how it happened. And I remember when he first said that, Mark Nelson, who was the head of the Nelson at the same time, that's wonderful, from all the other architects.
Stephen Hall. So he just had a very different perspective
a similar situation, Peter. The business school at UMKC needed more room. The enrollment at the business school has been growing rapidly. And the feeling was we needed more space in order to continue to grow. And as it is with public universities, not just in Missouri but elsewhere, it's very difficult to get public funding for new construction projects. So after some debate and concern about when this might happen, if it might happen, Dad stepped up and said, let's just do it now. I think he was about 90 at the time. He said he wanted to do it while he was still young.
Absolutely. Well, he accomplished that for sure, and you guys accomplished it. It's a beautiful building. If you haven't seen it, it really is an extraordinary addition to the campus, and its form and function, I think, are absolutely extraordinary. Okay, Dennis, you had to make all that happen over at the Nelson-Atkins. Give us a little bit of that background.
Myself and hundreds of other people.
Fair enough.
Just to build on what Henry indicated, the need for the building was really born out of a multi-year exercise of strategic planning. The museum was really bursting at the seams. They had lots of aspirations for the decade plus ahead. And really the key to that was to expand. And so out of that strategic planning process, which included the whole community, was born the notion that we were going to build, either build on or build somewhere on the site. Stephen Hall, as Henry indicated, really knocked the socks off of everyone, coming up with a plan and a concept that was embraced the existing building, which was very sacred to the community, and came up with something that really contrasted with the architecture that was there.
Were you ever nervous about how the community would receive the building, given that it was so different from the...
I don't think I was ever nervous. I think we realized that that feedback throughout the project at various times, but I think not unlike the Architectural Selection Committee and the trustees, we were fully on board with the notion, the concept. It was just exciting, utterly exciting.
All right, Steve, so you're the guy who helps conceive a lot of these projects and turn them into reality. And can you talk a little bit about how you're trying to achieve these multiple objectives from a contemporary design to form to function? How do you sort of reconcile those various things when you consider building a new building?
Great, Peter. Well, I think I can start by saying we began working with Henry and Tom, I think a little over 20 years ago. We learned early on through some not design conversations, but just really listening to the two of them talk about their objectives for how, at the time, we were helping H&R Bloch, but how they wanted to have real results out of the project. And I remember one day Henry talking about, we were adding onto a building over on Main Street, the old headquarters, really trying to create a sense of equity across the place to make everyone feel that they had the same quality environment. And that, I think one way to think about that, describe what that means in terms of all the projects we've worked with them on, is a notion that was coined by a couple authors a couple of years ago. It's called generous pragmatism. And what that means to those authors is what a building does matters as much as how it looks. And I think that, through all of these projects, we've been trying to help the institutional aspect, either H&R Bloch, the Art Institute, UMKC, or the Nelson, all do whatever it is they want to do better to grow, really to be transformative in terms of helping. For instance, we just talked about how the Bloch building has transformed the museum in so many different ways in terms of reaching out to the community. It's become for architects and for art aficionados, a place to come and visit, put Kansas City on the map.
And that, I think it's a tribute to what Stephen's idea and Henry and Tom's confidence in that, but it's also a tribute to the core idea of making the museum stronger and better, and making Kansas City stronger and better as a result.
So let me ask, I'll just throw the question out, any of the four of you can take this one, but these are remarkable projects, these three plus others that we could cite here in town. Do you think that they've helped Kansas Cityans appreciate modern architecture, appreciate sort of the beauty that we've created, again, in conjunction with the form and function that they're able to achieve? Anybody take that?
I thought it was interesting, and these two, the three of them know this better than I do, but during the construction of the Nelson addition, there were letters to the editor in the newspaper that just panned the concept. People hated it. This was during the construction, before the completion. And I remember reading some of these people saying, who made this decision to build this ugly thing? It may not mean anything to the folks from out of town, but
That was not meant to be a compliment.
but then when it's finished, Time magazine said it was the #1 architectural marvel in the world. In the world.
Peter, and I think mostly, 2 years ago, I was at the State Department interviewing for embassy for overseas work. And in the first meeting and the second meeting, over about a 2-week period, both times we were stopped and said, and the head of the interview committee said, why is Kansas City so hot? What is going on in Kansas City? Well, I thought they were going to find change. But in fact, it was about the design community, about the music community, but he was really asking about the architecture. What is, and now today, there's a People's Choice Awards. The AIA is being on right now. And then if you look at that, the People's Choice is going to be a very modern, it's going to be a very modern building. And I think and that's the people speaking. I think that the recent architecture in the city has been very transformative for us as a community in terms of better understanding what modernism is and how important it is to keeping our culture alive.
So David,
I think there's two occurrences in my time at the Nelson that brought people out of their homes to approach me or no doubt others. The first was the shuttlecocks. I had neighbors coming to me and asking me what we were doing and how could we imagine putting these oversized shuttlecocks on this land on our sculpture park. The second was the Bloch building. How could we imagine, intruding on the landscape of the sculpture park with this particular building? Both, interestingly, turned out to be icons, markers for the city. And I think, at least with my experience with the Bloch building, it was challenging through the process of construction. But I dare say nearly everyone, and frankly I can't think of a single individual, once the building was complete and they were able to not only understand the exterior, but move through the space, because it is a whole package, it is a whole experience. Everyone was transformed.
so Henry, as you were going through this, there was some criticism, as Dana suggests. How did you deal with that? Did you worry about that or not?
I worried. I did worry about it because they were talking about a very plain warehouse type building. But again, the director of the Nelson, Mark Wilson, felt very confident from the beginning. He always said it's going to be a great building when it's finished. It was very complicated. Dana, of course, understood the blueprints. I didn't. It was a very difficult building, I think, to build.
But it had to be tough when your name was going to be on the building to hear all that criticism.
complex building. It's a very much a one of a kind. It's in many ways, an organism that's mostly below grade, and partially above grade. It works really, really well with both of those very different environments. I mean, maybe going back to to Henry's, I think what was the most beautiful part of the experience of people watching it grow out of the ground, being critical, listening to the arguments, and maybe not even being convinced until they went inside. And once people go inside, it seems that it has a way of becoming beautiful. You see the beauty from the inside. You see the art in a way you've never seen it before. You are with your friends in a way you haven't been before. And then when you go back outside again, it's like, oh wait, that really is good. It really is a remarkable piece of the landscape. And I think that's.
I would only add one thing to that, and that is that despite its beautiful appearance, it was really constructed to make the art look good. And there are a lot of buildings made today where the art doesn't really look good. And we never compromise.
And it also makes people look really good.
So I want to keep on that theme for a minute because buildings of bricks and mortar and glass and other inanimate substances, but people occupy these buildings, whether it's the Bloch Executive Hall or we go to a performance at the Kauffman Center for the Performing Arts or we wander around the Nelson-Atkins, right? And so how have these buildings changed the experience of one who visits an art museum, who goes to a concert, or who studies at the Bloch School? How has it changed the experience?
I can tell you, the Bloch School, there is just a great sense of pride, I think, among the students that they are going to this school. It's a beautiful facility, and I think it just makes it feel like a great education, a great experience.
And certainly Teng-kee Tan, many of you know, is responsible for much of that building. I think you went on the trip with him, weren't you?
Right.
Look at Stanford and
Right.
other universities.
And I think
planning.
that's exactly. You felt a great deal of confidence, as did I, in what was going on at the Bloch School, in large part because of the dean, tremendous dean, who was supposed to be part of this panel today. Unfortunately, he's not with us. And I would also say we also felt great confidence in the leadership of the university under Leo Morton, the chancellor. Oh, Leo! Leo has taken this university to a whole new level, and there's just a tremendous amount of momentum at our urban university in the city, which is so important.
So as someone who has been in all these buildings and had different experiences in all these buildings, I can tell you that if you were here some years ago, we introduced you to the Lyric Theater, which is where we used to have our concerts and our symphony and our ballet and such, and then took you to the Kauffman Center. Not only is the building fundamentally different, but the experience is fundamentally different. I think that's what I'm trying to get at here, is whether you're a student at the Bloch School with space that's built for collaboration, or you're sitting in the Kauffman Center and you're hearing music in a wholly different way, not just because of the sound, but because of the sights and the way you're enveloped in that particular building. It's all about the experience as much as it is the physical structure.
Could I just ask for a show of hands for any of you that know Teng-kee Tan? Just about everybody here knows. And when he introduces himself, he says, "My name is Teng-kee."
So Steve, talk a little bit about this experience.
Well, Peter, I think you're absolutely right, and I'm glad you brought it up, because again, I said that everybody looks really good in the Bloch building, but it's actually really true. You might have an experience. You go there, take a photograph of yourself in that light, and look at it, because your skin becomes more enclosed. I mean, and I think that's representative of how we feel when we go in that room. I mean, I think the symphony is selling more tickets, the ballet is selling more tickets. I'm not sure if that's, I mean, I think that's true for the operas also. But, I think that our community's ability to appreciate this art, the medical students, there's a group of medical students that study in the Bloch School at night, and they kind of sneak in and take a look at the classroom, which is a great story. But it's also because they think they're learning, they're collaborating better together, which is what, Teng-kee's idea was about a collaborative experience, learning. And that, I think that's representative. Actually, I didn't know you were going to ask this question, but I actually made a list of the people who have come to Kansas City in the arts to be leaders since these 3 buildings were created. And it starts with a new leader, and Michael Stern, and Deborah Zandberg, Peter Whitman, Devin Hart, Eric Rosen. And I'm sure there are others that have joined, have become part of, this high arts community that we have. And I know if you ask Devin Carney why he became the artist, why he chose to take the job at the ballet, it's because of the architecture, because of it. It's also because it's a great ballet. I shouldn't go that far. But
Can Steve comment on at the university, this new building is really targeted for entrepreneurship education. And you did something there, this path of innovation.
Yeah.
Can you describe that?
So one day, Henry and Tom had me come out to their board meeting of the Bloch School Advisory Group to talk about the new design for the building. And afterwards, there was a new board member there, I think someone I had met before, who's the former dean of Bob Virgil, former dean of Washington University Business School. And he pulled me aside after the meeting to introduce this, and he made this comment, and it was kind of a throwaway comment in some respects, but he said it, and I asked him to say it again. The path of innovation is never a straight line. And he said that, and I thought that's what he said, and I asked him to say it again, and sure enough, that's what he said. And of course, it reminded me of Henry's path to creating H&R Block, which was 22 businesses before. And so that became the guiding light for the project. And so the idea is that as you move across the campus, from the existing building, through the new building, the student union, or other ways, up through the building, it's really about this path of innovation, this path of experiences, of learning experiences that are presented to the students to give them the opportunities to find their way, to create their new H&R Block, their new, Mid-America Arts Council, or whatever it is, but to create their new organization, their new product, the new iPhone, but to use that learning experience of, learning by doing, learning by making mistakes, learning by collaborating with your peers, by being inquisitive, by taking chances. And so the building is really designed around that. It's designed to change over time. We've got these long life strategies so that when the pedagogy of the Bloch School evolves, or when a stronger relationship with the School of Education or School of Engineering evolves, then this building can adapt to that rather than the students adapting to the building. So, at any rate, it's very much about where Peter started with, about the experiences, about creating this, taking away as many barriers as you can to having a great experience. Whether you're listening to music, you're looking at one of the most important impressions of the painting collection in the world in Kansas City, or learning about the new way of creating business.
The only thing I would add to that is the creation of that, and I think Steve represents, as you all know, the whole profession of building technology and construction and architecture. And all of that is very intentional. You can have a vision, you can even have an intent to just create new space. But Steve, the architects, the engineers, the creation of that experience, the removal of those roadblocks and those boundaries for that experience is a whole host of complex decisions and choices along the way and then you turn that into constructability. And I think that's a complex and intense part of these iconic buildings that Steve and his fellow colleagues represent.
So I started out by talking about our drive for Kansas City to be America's most entrepreneurial city. But in fact, that's not a new phenomenon. We've been a city who has bred many entrepreneurs, including one of the greatest ones sitting here in our panel. But how have our entrepreneurial traditions kind of helped us conceive these new spaces, these new buildings, and these new experiences that we're now providing folks from all over the world to come here?
I'll comment on that. Courage. I think that's the word in my view that sums it up. I think that to take the chance to not build just one predictable solution, but to have the courage to step out, as Henry pointed out, to pick that solution that is unlike any other. The Kauffman Center is saying courage that I think is inherent in individuals like Henry, the willingness to take that chance and to believe in something that perhaps isn't right in front of you, but you believe that it can be achieved and perhaps for a higher purpose. And it sounds kind of intangible, but 10 years into the project, early on, when the complexities were great and when we were listening to a lot of naysayers, that's what made the difference. It was the courage of the trustees and the architects and Mark Wilson, the director, that really kept us rolling forward. And I think the Nelson's not unique to that. I think that you see that in the other buildings throughout the city and the people that actually stand on it.
Well, entrepreneurs by definition are risk takers. And if you look at whether it's Henry or Julie Irene Kauffman and her dad, of course, they were entrepreneurs, and I think they are willing to take risks on building design, on innovation, and that's what entrepreneurs do. And I think it really is reflected in a lot of the wonderful new buildings we have here in Kansas City. Anybody else want to touch on that entrepreneurial connection? Well, we'd like to turn it over to the audience and see what questions you might have. If any, we have a rock star panel up here, and we sure love to engage you in the discussion. If not, I've got a few more questions before we let you go. But is there anything anyone from the audience would like to ask? Yes?
So what's next?
So what's next? Wow, that's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that. We're doing a streetcar. I don't know how we'll fit that.
That's all right.
No, that's...
What's next is potentially, if Leo, the chancellor, UMKC, has his way, there will be a whole new complex just south of downtown that will be a sort of take this cultural district to a whole new level by creating a campus for music and dance, essentially. Is that right, Leo?
The Conservatory of Music and Dance, the next subject, I think.
And that's the next subject for the day.
Yes?
I'd like to thank the Bloch family and Dana, her planning position, and Steve McDowell for the wonderful facility that the Nelson has become. And it's more than just an art gallery for the city. I didn't like it at all in the beginning. It was too extreme, but I love it now. It's mellowed in there. It's part of the community, and it's more than the building. It's the environment around it. It's the grounds, the outdoor art, as well as the indoor art. And I just thank you all. Thank you.
You need him.
Other questions for our panelists? Yes?
Do you think that it's just part of life that the public is generally going to be resistant to change? You think it's because they don't understand the vision? Because I mean, I think when you're, I'm a designer myself, so when I see the new project come along, I learn something about it. and I'm usually on board, but by and large, people tend to be sort of conservative, and when a new vision comes along that upsets the status quo, do you think it's just part of life that you're going to get this resistance?
Well, actually, I used to think that about Kansas City in particular, but I think that we actually now expect change. I think the community is, number one, we've started to recognize that, we do have issues that we need to be responsible for taking care of. And, but I think in some respects, the other what's next is taking care of our streets and sidewalks and creating beautiful, walkable places that the public realm. They're important to the conservatory campus, but they're important to the rest of the city as well. And so I think we are beginning to, as a community, we are seeing that we have to evolve to be relevant. Our family used to go to Chicago often for weekends, and we'd come back on Sunday night and on the last flight. And it was always great to be on the flight and there'd be these folks from, outside of Blue Springs or whatever. They had never been to light rail or any of that stuff. And they were just loving walking on Mission Avenue or wherever it was and having these rich urban experiences. And I think that we, as a global community, as a United States community, we've come to expect that. Kansas City is part of that. And so I think that we are expecting change to happen in a much different way. And we have higher expectations for design, which I think the iPhone and some other consumer products have been remarkable. Prius and other, have woken us up that change is okay, and change has, and there are good reasons to do things differently than we have in the past. And I think that the show me state, we're probably still the show me state, but we also really are starting to accept that innovation, entrepreneurship, and change are a very, very important, vital part of our life, and we're going to continue to grow.
Anybody else want to tackle that question? Resistance to change, which I think is a natural human instinct at some level, right? I think we all look at something and say, it works, leave it alone, make something look similar. And if you think about the Nelson-Atkins, if they had built another Romanesque type building, I think today we'd all be disappointed. I think it'd be fine. It would be fine. We'd go by it and say that's kind of neat. But now you see what we've been able to create there, and I think it really stands out as something that we're proud of. And it would not have been, I suspect, national and global recognition if we sort of copied the original design of the building. There's nothing wrong with that. It's period specific and it's beautiful for its period. But this is a different time. You wouldn't build this building today in the way you built it. But 100 years ago, it made a lot of sense. The other thing we've seen in our community is venues that are specific to their purpose. So what do I mean by that? Our soccer team built one of the most beautiful stadiums in the world, about 20 miles south of here in Kansas City, Kansas. Before that, they were playing in Arrowhead. Arrowhead Stadium holds 80,000 people. Now think about this, 80,000 people. This isn't Europe. We don't draw 80,000 people for a soccer game. We probably draw 20,000. So think about 20,000 people inside an arena that's for 80,000 people. It just doesn't work. The experience is just not the same. But you build a soccer-specific stadium that holds 20,000 people, you get 20,000 people there, the place is rocking and rolling. It's absolutely appropriate for what you're trying to achieve to create that experience for those individuals who participate. And that's just another example of how I think we've been very smart as a community to say Arrowhead's for football, 80,000, no problem, loudest stadium in the world, that's terrific. We need to build something uniquely different for soccer, and we went and did that. It's not dissimilar, I think, to the kinds of experiences you now get in the Bloch building at UMKC, or you get in the Kauffman Center, or you get in any of our unique structures. So just another perspective. Things have to be specific to the activities that are going on inside that building to create the kind of experience you want to have.
Peter, I think one other comment about your thought about resistance to change. I think it was about 10 years ago, the business school at UMKC, which bears his name, made a very conscious decision to create a center for entrepreneurship. In other words, to train people to be entrepreneurs. It was a novel idea 10 years because people that thought you either have it or you don't. You're either an entrepreneur or you aren't. But to train somebody, to teach somebody to become an entrepreneur, you can't do that. So there was a lot of people who criticized that, who questioned that. But now, today, there are entrepreneurship centers within business schools all over the world. So it's very much an accepted part of education, especially business education.
Are there any other questions from the floor? Yes?
My question is very simple. It sounds very simple for Chinese participants of this discussion. Among the buildings you show us, they are all very important here in Kansas City. We'd like to know which one is the oldest, which one ranking highest among the most important buildings in the United States. Which one play most important role in the people's lives here? That's my quick question.
I'm not touching that one. I'm going to let the panel answer that one.
So could you repeat that question?
I think the essence of the question is we built these wonderful edifices, these wonderful buildings. Which one's the most important in the life of Kansas Cityans, people who live in Kansas City? Is that a fair characterization?
I'd say Nelson is probably the one that touches the most people in the United States, and that because it has the longest legacy. I mean, the first building was built in 1925, so it's been very much a part of the community for a long, almost 100 years. And so the new building that launched 10 years ago is really just taken off with that momentum. What's been really fantastic, though, is the new building, in addition to the programs that are going on inside the building, has allowed the museum to grow across the whole community to be much more accessible to all the different neighborhoods and community aspects of the city. That's not by accident, it's very intentional, because I think that what Mr. Bloch did was give such a beautiful gift to the city that the museum feels even a stronger obligation to share it with everyone, make it accessible. Just the docent program, all those things are so much more robust. And then also it's an international site now. People come from all over the world. They already came to see the Chinese collection, but now they come to see everything else. That would be my vote.
I would agree, and I think I would add to that while the Bloch building and the Nelson-Atkins building, they're the buildings that people go to visit, but it's the collection. And the collection has actually been in place, as Steve pointed out, since the late 20s, early 30s, and will continue to grow. So that's a timeless reality for the Nelson.
I would agree. Nothing I have.
Any thoughts? One more poll for questions. If not, I'd like to thank our panelists. Please join me in doing so. We have gotten close to being back on schedule, and so we thank the panelists for that as well. And we do appreciate your time and attention today to this topic, and I'll